All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. My name is Todd Rouse. I'm here with my co-founder, Susan Schultz, and we would like to welcome everyone to HBAP Startups. So let's get started. For those of you who are new to the Startups group, we have a few announcements at the beginning of each meeting. We do some short networking breakout rooms, and then we'll come back together for our main event. First off is our mission. We're here to help foster and fortify an innovation and entrepreneur community coming out of the Harvard Business Analytics program. Our goal is to provide our members with the tools, knowledge, leadership, and confidence necessary to create and grow their businesses from the ground up. We have a bunch of ways of engaging with us. I'm going to post a few links into the Zoom chat so everybody can sign up for our newsletter, check out our website, subscribe and to our YouTube channel. Just a couple of additional announcements that I like to throw out. Some news, some AI news that's constantly happening. Stability.ai, the company that made Stable Diffusion, has now announced stableCode. They are also apparently facing some leadership challenges, as do many startups. Also, Stable Diffusion, for those of you who have heard of Stable Diffusion, it's a generative AI tool that creates images. I am running a workshop tomorrow night. And I've got some room available. So Run Diffusion is a company which I just realized I got the wrong slide on here, but whatever. I'm putting this into the Zoom chat. If you're interested in joining this workshop tomorrow night at 5:30 p.m., please fill out that form. Space is limited. I've got about 2 or 3 more spots left. And I just wanted to open it up to our group if somebody's interested in learning how to use Stable Diffusion in the cloud. And the company is called Run Diffusion. So Actually, I have another link for that, but I'll throw in there later. Also, Google is doing a lot of work with Project IDX. So if you are a developer and you want to code things, check out idx.dev. You will sign up for their pre-release waitlist. Also, Google's really kicking butt. They are now adding generative AI search alongside with their search. Go to labs.google.com and you can actually play with their experimental generative AI right in line with search, just like Bing Chat is. Our hopes are dashed as LK99 is unfortunately not a superconductor, so we're just going to have to live without it. But the good news is we now have net energy gain in fusion, so the future is looking quite bright. That's it for my news. Susan.
So in addition to being the source of all news truth, we also are really driving to create this environment of collaboration and trust so that people can come and learn and get feedback and give feedback in a safe environment. And so just a reminder that all rights are reserved by the presenter unless they tell us otherwise. And then also Francis Fry's feedback approach modified by Kelly Kimball, which is really just work to give positive feedback when we're talking to people, because that's the most easily absorbed and the most easily put into practice. And then, as always, if anybody's concerned about a conflict of interest or confidentiality or anything like that, just come and talk to Todd and me, and we'll help you figure it out. And then we've got some really cool stuff coming up, even more in October as well. But here's a sneak preview of the rest of August and then September. So next week we have Iyang Ino, who is like this awesome footballer. I'm using the right term instead of soccer player. Has played in 2 FIFA World Cups, 2 African Nations Cups, and really what's cool, and he's going to come talk to us about, is he started this company called 4P Baller, which is really helping young, aspiring, and seasoned athletes become better performers through a very balanced approach, a holistic lifestyle approach. And then 2 breaks because it's the summer, so everybody can kick back and hang out on the beach or whatever. And then the beginning of September, we have our monthly social, and then the next date in September, we have Jana Hefford, who has competed in 5 Olympic Games and won 4 Olympic gold medals. And she's in the Hockey Hall of Fame. And she's also the chairperson currently of the Professional Women's Hockey Players Association. So she's going to come and talk to us about her journey and her career as well.
Thanks, Susan. So let's do some social breakout rooms. We'll be back in about 5 or 6 minutes. I will see you shortly. All right, everyone should be joining us. All right, welcome back, everyone. I hope you had fun in your breakout rooms. Just a little reminder, please fill out the survey when you exit Zoom this evening. A little web browser page will show up. We like to gather data. It reduces cholesterol levels. It gives you great complexion. It increases stamina, and we're data analytics people. And without data, we become distraught, sad, lost, and depressed. So please fill out that survey. Again, just a little reminder, our recordings will be made public on YouTube. And please stick around for some overtime after we're done with the main event, and we will stop recording and we can hang out for some overtime. All right, so now it is my honor to introduce tonight's speaker, Jake Guernsey. Jake is an entrepreneur with over a decade of experience building tech products that people love. His current venture, called Break the Web, is a next-generation news platform designed to bring everyone to the same table in an age of echo chambers. It fixes the broken business model of digital news and delivers a news consumption experience that can compete in a social media world. Break the Web is powered by a proprietary new data processing technology called CTX, and it's developed over 2 years by Jake and his co-founder, and it pairs perfectly with large language models to synthesize current events in real time. And handling current events is something that LLMs kind of struggle with because it's not in their training data. And given the unique compatibility between CTX and generative AI, the company is also pursuing a range of other use cases beyond their core product. And now, without further ado, as is our custom here, please, let's all briefly unmute ourselves and let's give a warm round of applause to Jake Guernsey. We're not unmuting well enough, but Jake, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Just a subtle round of applause for first time introduction. Thank you guys for having me, Todd and Susan, for setting this up. And a special thanks to Kelly Kimball, who I see over there, who was my entree into this group to begin with. Kelly and I spoke a few weeks ago, and he's just a clearly incredible guy. And so he said I should consider coming to this group, and wanted to take him up on that opportunity. So I'll make my own little announcement before we start, which is that my wife is 9 months pregnant and some change. So there is a small but non-zero chance that you'll just see a wisp of smoke in my seats at some point during this, but I expect we'll be okay. So let me go ahead and...
Congratulations. That's exciting.
I could feel, even through the mute, I could feel the congratulations coming. So I didn't feel...
I'm actually hoping this happens, because this is... I'd like to see this.
You're the only one. I'm not. I think...
It makes for good TV.
Yeah. It makes for good TV.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, let me tell you guys a little bit about my company. So company's called Break the Web, and it's dubbed the internet's official scoreboard. And I'm going to start with the end, and then I'll back up and tell the longer story. So the most important thing to remember, and really the core of what we've built, is a data processing technology 2 years in the making that my co-founder and I have been building for our own reasons, that just so happens to pair incredibly well with large language models to process current events in real time and at scale, which, given the makeup of this room, I think you're all probably pretty familiar with ChatGPT and others' limitations around current events. But the way we think about it, it's really for two reasons. One is they have the entire history of the internet at their disposal, but nothing in the entire history of the internet can tell them what's going to happen today. That's sort of the nature of the news. And then because what they're doing is so immensely rich and complex, there's a lot of time and effort associated with incorporating new training data into the mix. So right now, somewhat famously, the training data only goes to 2021. I'm sure they'll close that gap to a large degree over time, but at some level, there's just a structural lag in between things being published on the web and generative AI itself being able to incorporate that into their training data. And so the technology that we've built is sort of like a it's a shortcut in a way. We're not an AI platform, and I don't want to misrepresent what we've built, but we are a data processing technology that just is incredibly compatible with generative AI, and together they sort of fuse together to enable large language models to work with current events in a totally different, scalable, and automated way than they currently can. So that's kind of the big idea, and I'll return to this, and I think it'll be really interesting, especially during the Q&A. But now I'm going to kind of switch gears and talk about what our core product actually is and the reason why we built this data processing technology to begin with, which is a product called Break the Web, which is, I'm going to start with the product. So this will be in three sections. I'll start with the product. I'll explain a little bit afterwards of the philosophy behind the product. And then I'll get into a little bit of the future state, the revenue, business model, grand vision, and then explain the technology. So that'll be the flow. I'll try and move through it pretty quickly because I am more interested, I think, in the Q&A than in listening to myself describe our company. But I think this will give you guys a really good grounding in what we're building and why. So Break the Web is first and foremost a live scoreboard of what's trending online at any given time, powered entirely by machine. So what you're seeing here in the screen is the home screen of the app, and our data processing technology basically scans everything that's being published across a large part of the internet, and we have this method of sorting and ranking content by theme and virality. And so you open it as a user, and you just see an objective machine-generated list of the topics that are breaking the web, quote unquote. The way you use it is super simple. Every topic has a landing page, and that landing page is completely generated by AI. So you see the Boris Johnson figure in the background is an AI-generated image. The summary that you see there is an AI-generated image, which is culled from anywhere from 30 to 50 to 100 different sources talking about it. But another one of the standout features that people get drawn to right away, you can toggle between different viewpoints. So we have a main summary, but if you toggle the left and right, you can also see what specifically the left side of the spectrum is, how the left side of the spectrum is interpreting this issue, or how the right side of the spectrum is interpreting this issue. And so kind of a neat little, I don't want to call it a trick, but it's definitely a new concept that I don't think has existed before, and lets people really just get a quick glimpse of like all the sides of the conversation, which, as you'll see, is a pretty big theme of the product. So that's the main screen. If you tap the screen, you get kind of the story behind the story, let's call it, which is the advanced stats of any story. You see kind of how old the story is, how many articles are associated with it, what the political leaning is, what the regional coverage is. And this is our little nod to, like, advanced metrics have come for every industry over the last 20 years. And this is our way of sort of introducing it into the news. So you kind of get a, let's call it a meta view of what's happening with the story. And so you can see it just from a different perspective. If you swipe down at any time, it switches between topics, and it's ranked by virality score. So the number one story is most trending all the way down in order. If you swipe right, you get access to essentially as many viewpoints as we can find about that perspective as possible. And the way we think about it is to try and create a three-dimensional view of every story. And the premise behind this is one thing the internet has done is just proliferate the number of voices that are commenting on any given topic. It's not your parents' news consumption era anymore. And so consuming content from a single source really limits your ability to understand what's actually going on. And so we want to create a range of easily accessible complementary perspectives for people to understand the full breadth of a story. It's a top 20 list. So this is one of the things about BTW that is unique, is it's kind of a finite experience. As a user, you can select whether to go beyond 20, and we'll get like 90 or 100 conversations that are happening on the internet at any given time, but you have to choose to do that. We have this blocker in place where, okay, you're all caught up, and that's it. Like, that's the essential bits that you need to know at any given time. Live notifications keep you posted throughout the day. And this is one of the interesting features about BTW. A lot of news platforms, when you get notifications, it's about a specific article that was written. And it's sort of arbitrary in whether how valuable that is or how meaningful that article is. Like, why did I get a notification about what the Barstool sports guy just did one random day? Whereas because we organize everything by topic, our notifications are really targeted. So when there's a new top story, you get a notification, and it's condensed to the title. So it's not an article, it's just this is the topic and this is what happened. We give you notifications when something goes viral, or you can get notified. This is for the more aggressive users. Anytime a new story breaks into the top 20. I, of course, have that set up, but it's like dozens of notifications a day, and you're a hardcore news subscriber if you want that. But it's just a different flavor of notifications. And then each day ends with sort of the final recap. And this is a newsletter that we send out via app, but also it's available via email. And it's just a completely machine-generated newsletter. It's never touched by a human being. It's very similar to it's identical really to the tech behind the product that I just showed you, but it's just wrapped up in a more standardized email format. And whereas the BTW20, we call it, kind of tracks what changes in real time, the bottom line gives you kind of the overarching sense of like what was the order of virality of what trended that day. So, and I should say, when we were developing this, I was looking for a clever name for the world's first AI-powered newsletter. And so I did ask ChatGPT what it thought would be a great name for the first AI-powered newsletter. And I think my jaw must have just hit the floor when it returned the bottom line to me. I couldn't believe it. And that's when I knew that we had to go with it. So that's the bottom line. So that is kind of the core product experience. And that's the product that we have launched with now and just hit the market. A little bit of the theory behind the product, and some of you have probably picked up on a lot of this already. There's really 4 principles at work, or 4 benefits we want to give to the user. The first is that it's just the single most efficient way to tune into what matters. And the premise here is that it's both harder than ever and more important than ever to follow along with current events. We have this saying internally that content is culture now, and we believe this to be true. This is what we share and how we communicate as a society all filters through these day-to-day stories that happen in the world and online. And it's sort of the stage on which everything plays out. But if you actually are going to be someone who follows what's happening, not only in the news world, but in the pop culture world, in the meme world, in all these different aspects of digital culture, which is really just to say culture these days, you're going to spend all day doing it. And you're going to have to be on a million platforms, some of which you probably don't know how to use, you don't have experience with, it's not really your lane, and you're just going to have to do a lot of digging around. And so really the founding idea of Break the Web was frustration on my part. It's like, can somebody just tell me what I need to know? Like, tell me what matters and get rid of all the noise and just show me the signal. And that was kind of, I think that's the Twitter Reddit dynamic, which is like, you can be across what happens if you want to make your life tied to like tracking down what you find on these platforms and curating it and making it work for you. But we really wanted to deliver something that had no noise, none of the noise associated with those platforms. It's just what matters. And so that's what I think we really like about the Break the Web concept is you can quickly tune in. It's all organized by topic. It's named, it's ranked. So there's really no more streamlined or efficient way to catch up on what matters. And this goes both directions. On the vertical scroll, if you just want to catch up briefly on topics, that's a fundamental value of efficiency there. But if you're someone who likes to dive deep into news stories and see every angle, well, there's also a fundamental value of efficiency there because it's all right next to each other. You don't have to go searching around. So there is just a fundamental value of efficiency. And in many ways, the data processing technology that we've built is just designed to cut through the clutter and just show what matters at any given time. So that's the first benefit and value of Break the Web. The second is all the perspectives on every topic. And this one is really close to my heart. We just all need more perspectives on more topics more of the time, period. This is for so many reasons. With this many, like consuming content, when I was a kid, for example, you watched TV or you read a news article and that was it. You got the contour of the story. You got the plot. Nowadays, that has nothing to do with it. You're getting just a fraction of the value of a story if you just see what happened. Well, whose perspective was it from? What are the hot takes? What do they see? What do they say? What do they say? And because it's all on this stage of culture, it's really important to just like be across this three-dimensionality of any given topic. So that's what the internet has wrought. And then the second reason I think this is really important, and this is more of a maybe esoteric point, but as we were starting the company, I was reading a lot about quantum physics. I'm not a scientist, and I understood probably a fraction of what I was reading, but there were a few things that stuck. And I sort of layered it onto my thinking around the news, because they're actually, the news and physics, trying to do something very similar in a weird way, which is like, what's reality? What's happening around me? What's the truth? And for the longest time in physics, and this is from Newton through Einstein, there was this real pull for like, what's the overarching truth of the universe? What's the ultimate reality that we're striving for? But one of the things that quantum physics has showed us, and this I will give a shout out to Dr. Carlo Rovelli for cluing me into this one. Quantum physics basically says the best we can say about reality is that reality is interaction. That's all. We can't say anything else about reality except it's interaction. And it happens on every layer. It happens at the atomic level, it happens at the ecosystem level, it happens at the social level. It's just interaction between parts. And as I was thinking about this news product, it made me realize like, oh my God, we're doing it all wrong. You know, like, and I was reminded of that game you play when you're kids, you know, where you just like stack hands on top of hands and you try and be the last one on top. And I was like, oh, we're trying to do that with our perspectives. And we're trying to say like, this is a bad perspective. That's the wrong perspective. This is the winning perspective. But if quantum physics is right, actually, that's not helping you at all, because it's not about, reality is not about finding the master truth. It's just about interaction between perspectives. And so that's the theory behind the carousel of content, is we're not trying to show you the truth. That's not what this product is built for. This product is built for perspectives. And the way that you approach the truth, at least in this way of understanding the world, is just by seeing them all interact with each other. They're all already out on the internet. It's just nobody's going to go look for every single perspective. But putting them all right next to each other really makes it easy for people to get that full breadth of understanding about any given topic. The third reason, it works like social media. You know, this is something that I think my generation and below really experiences, which is the products that we use on our phones are really good. They're really compelling user experiences. Like TikTok, oh my God, TikTok is an incredible user experience. Like, set aside the geopolitics, it's an amazing thing. You don't have to curate a network. You don't have to follow people. You don't have to search around. All you have to do is decide, am I going to swipe down or not? And honestly, most of the time the answer is yes, I'm going to swipe down, because it's just such a simple decision point, and the machine behind it makes the experience better for you over time. All of the best experiences on our phones have this combination of like killer technology, killer software, and killer user experience. But all of them are kind of built like for more childish or trivial purposes, or like nobody's given this the adult treatment, in my view, yet. And so it occurred to me that if we really want the next generation to be engaged citizens, we need to speak to them where they are. We need to give them a product that allows them to engage with the news and with the world in a way that they're accustomed to, that's just as exciting as TikTok. If we can't do that, like these big blocks of text on a page, that may be how some people grew up, and that's how I grew up too, but it doesn't fit the environment that we live in anymore. And so it was really important to us to connect the experience with a highly usable interaction style that people just want to be around. And kind of like the hidden idea behind this is, can you weaponize our natural instinct to just scroll and swipe around our phone mindlessly a few times a day, but use it for a good purpose by getting people to swipe through diverse perspectives on a news topic, for example? It satisfies that kind of itch to just browse around mindlessly, but it doesn't necessarily hurt you, right? It's actually good. It exposes you to a broader array of perspectives. And so that's the third reason that we built Break the Web the way they did. And the fourth is really this concept of shared experience. I think we have personalized everything over the last 20 years because we can, basically, and because a lot of the attention economy economics suggests that the more you fragment people, the more you send them down their own narrow little tunnels of interest, the more revenue you're going to get. And that's fine. And there's a lot of room for personalized experiences. I'm not knocking that. But I am suggesting that as human beings, we have two parts of our experience. One is the very individual part of the experience, and it's very isolated and it's our tunnel. But one is the shared space that we all live in. And even news platforms, they just want to personalize and give you the news you want. But is that really the point of the news? Like, is it built for like a personalized experience? Like, should it be? And so we all want shared experiences. You know, we just keep getting sent down these paths of personalized experiences. And so one of the founding impulses here was like, can you recreate a water cooler feeling for the internet age? And my image of the water cooler was always like people in suits standing around the water cooler talking about like the last night's episode of Seinfeld, right? That's my ultimate image. And it looks like such a peaceful, fun image where everybody is like on the same page and getting together and talking about that. But the thing is, you can't create a shared experience of monoculture anymore. Like, that's something that doesn't exist anymore. And if you try, it's not going to work. So what Break the Web tries to do is create a shared experience, but a shared experience of the multiverse, let's say. And it doesn't try and suggest there's not all these different things going on, but it does offer people a way to like, hey, what are other people looking at? What's important to other people? Like, what's the general sense of what's going on that's beyond just me, basically? And so those are kind of the reasons that we believe in BTW as a product and built it the way we built it. And I think you can see those principles pretty vividly on display in the app if you've got it. And by the way, if anyone wants to follow along more in the real life version of the app, it's available on the App Store, Break the Web. So definitely download it if you have any interest in following along that way. So that's the product. Share a little bit about our progress to date. You're actually catching us at a pretty fascinating time. We launched July 1st, 2023, after 2.5 years of building the product. And since then, for the first month, we didn't really acquire any users, and that wasn't the plan. We really released this product as kind of a proof of concept for fundraising because we have money to keep the company alive, but we don't really have money to expose it to a wide audience. And so our plans were really never to blow it out at this stage. But we started advertising on August 1st, so 9 days ago, and it has just hit a nerve in a way that I couldn't even begin to tell you. Like, we're charting 94. This might be a few days, this might be a little outdated now, but we were charting 94 in the news category of the App Store, ahead of some pretty heavy hitters like USA Today, LA Times, Breitbart, Politico. We just passed our 1,000th user today, and this is not a typo. We're acquiring 100+ users a day right now on a $15 ad spend. So customer acquisition cost is 20 cents a user. And having been around the startup game for a while, I didn't really believe the numbers myself when I first saw them, because it's not supposed to happen that way. And all we're doing is running this campaign that we call Shots Fired, which is just us taking shots at the social media platforms that I think people right now, especially, everyone kind of hates all their apps, is kind of the basic premise of it. And so we run these ads that just says, because Twitter died and X marks the spot, because you need a PhD to use Reddit, because Instagram's a shopping cart, because not every moment is a TikTok moment. And I didn't expect these to do much more than give us a test bed of what messaging worked, but it's working, and we're getting 5 or 6 downloads an hour right now. And so it's kind of changed not the trajectory, but it's changed our view of what this could be, and specifically how quickly and on what kind of budget. So that, when Kelly and I spoke a few weeks ago, even when Todd and Susan invited me to do this, hadn't started yet. So this is really brand new. And it's early, I would say. Like, these things sometimes scale differently than they start out. But I think for me personally, and for the company, as indication that if you put the product in front of people, it will resonate with them. I think it's a huge positive step in the right direction, especially when it comes to investor confidence and things like that. Like, you got to be able to acquire users. And I think even in our small way, we're showing that this is an app that resonates with people. So that's kind of where we're at. That's the present state of Break the Web right now. I'll share a little bit about next steps and what we envision, and then I'll explain the technology underpinning it, which you guys will probably be kind of interested in. So 2 things are going to happen next, and the vision is really 2 forms of revenue generation that we believe, one in a kind of a small scale and one in a much bigger scale. The first is that we are going to release these custom slices, right? And I know I talked a lot about a shared experience, and that is a super important, valuable part of Break the Web. But at the end of the day, like, people also have their own interests. We have both of those parts of our experience. That's fine. But the cool thing is, because we're underpinned by a data processing software rather than human curation, we can scale our technology across endless data sets. Like, it just depends what data sets we point it to, and it finds the trends and it organizes it. And so we have this whole range of local slices that are coming by topic: film and TV, basketball, fashion, whatever you want, but also the ability to create your own slices. So you can track, not only just have slices dedicated to individual sources or authors that you like, but also mix and match by topic, by keyword. And so it can become this very personalized experience at the same time. And what that allows us to do is really crank on the AI generated side. Like, our capabilities in terms of AI generation are really only scratching the surface. And once we introduce slices, we're going to be able to offer on-demand AI generated summaries for things you choose at the touch of a button. Like, we're pretty restrained when it comes to our use of AI in the current product, but we envision a paid version of the app that really lets users create their own experiences and sort of at the touch of a button, get AI to help you do stuff. And I think the difference here is anyone can go to ChatGPT, find all your source material, and ask for summaries or different things. It's a big step to do, right? And so if you can organize it all, make it touch of a button for people, I think that will be a really useful kind of interim step that people will gravitate towards. So we're releasing that soon. And then the big picture vision, and I know a lot of people have a lot of feelings about this, but we really believe in it, is call it like Spotify for news content. And the basic premise here is the model's broken and it's not going to be fixed. And it's one of those really unique situations where it doesn't work for anybody, the current news business model. Publishers, unless you're the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, or the Atlantic, you're basically on death's door, and you're stuck between 2 really bad options, which is the ad model, which delivers users just the worst imaginable experience with cookie agreements and banners and tracking and all these things, or a subscription model. And you just, unless you have the clout to pull it off, like, you're not going to get subscribers. Like, you really need to be a super fan to subscribe to a news provider, honestly. And like, for users, how many subscriptions can you possibly have? Like, I have 3, and I think that's probably a lot by a lot of people's standards, So not only does it contribute back to the echo chamber challenge, because, well, I'm just going to pick one. I'm not going to get another one just for the sake of balance, right? But also, it puts so it locks people out of a lot of content that they would otherwise read, and it stops publishers from from getting revenue from any more than their like top 1% of super fans. And so given the success of aggregator models in other industries, and the unsustainable tension in the current model, we think this is the inevitable way forward. And people argue the toss on that. I know there's a big ick factor around news aggregators, and that's fine. But I think you just need to pair it with a product that really exposes, that makes discovery a big part of the process. And that's what Break the Web is. It's a gigantic discovery mechanism for content that you might not otherwise have seen. And so we also think the model is right in front of us. We just did this with the record industry 20 years ago. And the basic idea is like, we don't consume content by the album anymore. We consume it by the single. And paying for news subscriptions, it's just this archaic, dated way of consuming content. And I know there's a lot of gatekeepers and it's a complex industry. And I've been told all the reasons why this won't work. But we see no reason, not only do we see no reason why it can't work, we think eventually it's going to have to work unless we want the free press to disappear. But we don't think that's ever going to happen. And I'll give an example of like what the dynamic is. The Dallas Morning Times has less subscribers in Dallas than the New York Times. That's a stat that's really always stayed with me. Like if Dallas can't have more, if they can't come together and support their local paper, like, well, nobody else is going to, right? And it's because when people have to choose 1 or 2 subscriptions, they're always going to choose the top one. And so you get this very top heavy system where it's only 2 or 3 newspapers that actually can survive. And we don't think that's a good idea. We think it's actually not the way the internet works. Like it's more voices, it's not less voices. And so at some point, this is going to happen. And so this is the model we envision. And it works 2 ways. For users that do not have a subscription, they can just pay per click. So, 10 cents, 15 cents, 25 cents per article. We do a revenue share on the back end with publishers. All good. But for users who just want access to all the content all the time, they can subscribe monthly to BTW. So call it $12.99 a month. They get access to all the content in their ecosystem, but on the back end, it works the same way. We just do a revenue share with the publishers. And so I know that we're not going to start with the New York Times in terms of a partnership, but in our view, as we get to a certain number of users, like there's a lot of desperate publishers out there who are in need of other revenue streams, and relatively few companies that actually control most of those papers. And so we think it's a pretty doable, albeit complicated path. But the most important thing, and the thing that unlocks all of it, is you need a product that people love. If you don't have users, you can't change the dynamic. Like one of my favorite quotes, which is a political quote that I'll reuse here, is power only responds to counterpower. And I think that's really true. And when it comes to making these big types of systemic changes, like you have to be able to come to the table with your own form of counterpower. Otherwise, nobody is going to work with you. And so we're going to focus on BTW and building the user base and making sure it's just the best product it can be. But this is the model that we really envision going towards in the future. Although we do have optionality, and I'd be happy to speak with you guys about some of the other channels for us. But this is where we started, and this is the product vision for Break the Web. And then once that happens, users are also gifted with the great experience of like everything's unified. There's no reason to send people out to other sites. Let journalists focus on journalism and just writing great content. You don't need to deal with writing an app, with how your UI is necessarily going to look. The users can have a standardized experience, no cookie agreements, no paywall, no none of that. Just direct relationship in this sort of marketplace between publishers and consumers with Break the Web as kind of the middleman. So that's like the vision side. Let me ask Todd and Susan, because I'm happy to stop and do Q&A, or I can kind of speak through the technology.
Oh, please keep going. I love the technology part, but I'm biased. Yeah.
I think we all will, but I know there's a lot of questions. So
yeah. And that's, I hope so. So
yeah.
The technology side, I'm going to have to explain it more visually than like practically. I can't get too much into the nuts and bolts of it, but I think it'll be helpful as a starting point. So the core problem, or the core requirement for Break the Web to work, is to be able to organize things by topic. That's the single thing that drives the technology. When we had this in mind to create this objective virality scoreboard for the internet, the most important thing is like, can your technology accurately and automatically identify what a topic is? What's the Donald Trump indictment topic? What's the Women's World Cup topic? What's the Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg cage fight topic? Although I wish it wasn't a topic. What's the, whatever, any topic that exists, we need to be able to identify it. And it's way harder than you think. We knew how hard it was, we wouldn't have started, and it's full credit to my co-founder, who is just an absolute monster of a software engineer. Pattern recognition is really easy for human beings and really difficult for machines, certain types of pattern recognition. Anyone in this room could look at 1,000 articles and accurately just put them in piles connected to each topic. Because we have layers of subtext that we understand about words. Like, what is a Donald Trump? What is a World Cup? What's the difference between a world and a cup and the World Cup? Who are the players? What's New Zealand? What's a goal? Like, we have all these things that we don't even think about that we understand. Machines don't have any of that. And the analogy that I would give is to CAPTCHA systems, which, like, okay, obviously we can recognize a stop sign or a horse on the side of the road. But that's something the machines really struggle with because they don't have that layers and layers of subtextual context. Same with linguistic pattern recognition. They don't have the layers of context. And so we tried all the existing methods of organizing content by topic, and it just didn't work. We got bad results or limited results, and like we needed more accurate data and a greater volume of data if we really wanted to say we were the internet's scoreboard. And so what that has led to is this new algorithmic process for linguistic pattern recognition in a database of web content. And so here you see, this is kind of the single phrase of it, a trend analysis software that automatically sorts and ranks the internet by theme and virality. But what's under that is just a keyword analysis tool that's able to scan what's happening, what all the words are across all the internet in real time, and figure out what belongs together at any given time. So this is a kind of abstract visualization of it, but we really like it, and we think it speaks to kind of the difference. So I'm going to start with kind of like what search engines are. We call what we've built, for what it's worth, sometimes a search engine without search. And this is the reason why. So search engines are built on a technical process called TF-IDF. And this is an oversimplification. Not all of them are, and it's a lot more sophisticated than that. But at a base level, it's TF-IDF, which is a statistical measure that calculates relevance by inverse value. And it doesn't really matter who knows that or who doesn't know that, but it's basically a question and answer system between the user and the database. So the starting point here, this is the search term that a person enters into Google or wherever, Hawaii wildfires. What happens then is the search engine will run the TF-IDF process to produce the most relevant results. Those results are defined as relevant based on their relation to the search terms. That's like the premise of TF-IDF. But if you think about it, when something is published on the internet, it doesn't really have any relationship to anything else automatically. It actually kind of requires a search by the user for the search engine to like group things together by relevance. So there's that user requirement. The user asks a question, the search engine answers through TF-IDF process. I would contrast this heavily with CTX, which is what the system that we've built. The way it works for us is data comes into our system in a similar way. We crawl the web, we have individual articles just floating around our database, but what we have to do is this. Without the help of users at any point, we have to group things that belong together, name them, and rank them. And it's actually a lot worse than this, because what really our database looks like is this. It's just endless amounts of content, hundreds of thousands of pieces of content at any given time flowing through our system. And we have to do this. So everything's mixed with everything. We don't know what the boundaries are. Like, we got to figure out, like, what's the World Cup? What's Hawaii wildfires? What's Beijing floods? Make sure not to have any overlap between the two. And so going from this to this it's simple when you have a user asking a question, really freaking complicated when you're just doing it with a machine only. And that's the process that we pioneered, that just hadn't been, is a stone that hadn't been unturned. And it's just also extremely difficult. So the reason that this is so special is two reasons. First, it basically allows a database of web content to organize itself. And this is back to what I was saying about when you publish something on the internet, nothing happens to it until a user searches and it gets glued into that community of content. But what happens with CTX is every piece of content that comes in, nothing exists in isolation. It automatically gets grouped into where it belongs. And so right now we have 2,500 sources in our database, but it's a completely automated web crawler. And the only thing stopping us from getting to 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 is just server space. And like I told you, we have money to keep the company alive, but we don't have money to market or to blow out our AWS costs. But there's no reason that if we had 100,000 sites, that it wouldn't work the same way. It's built for scale. And so we imagine putting this under the entire current event and news side of the web, of the internet, and just creating essentially sort of a carve out web browser that's just built for current event content. That's everything's organized by topic automatically, ranked by relevance, etc. So the ability to autonomously let a database of web content organize itself is very new. And I mean, we think it's very cool also. The second reason, and it's tied to the first, it is astonishingly compatible with large language models. And this is where I get full circle back to where I started, which is the compatibility between CTX and large language models. On their own, large language models cannot really process current events for these structural reasons, or I should say they really struggle to. We have no crystal balls. We don't know what's going to happen, but they have some structural reasons why it's really hard. What CTX does is basically pre-organizes all the content to feed to the large language model. Because even if they can't process current events in real time, LLMs, they're still the world's greatest calculators, and they can synthesize information, any information you give it. But CTX, just unlike needing a human being to like organize all content and feed it to the large language model, we're just automatically, with whatever database we're working with, organizing things by topic. And as a final step in Break the Web, we just feed any given thread, we call them threads, content to ChatGPT and ask for a summary. And so even though I lead with, this is an AI kind of like generated product, like there's very little AI itself in Break the Web. It's just the final step of the process. I mean, we were building Break the Web for almost 2 years before ChatGPT came out. We loved the product as it already was, but it just has this hand in glove fit. And so we can autonomously organize content by topic as this prep step. And so it becomes this partner technology that lets large language models work with current events in a much more automatic and scalable way. And we use it for Break the Web, but we also imagine like they create magic together, CTX and large language models. And so we imagine, and we are sure, because we're already building one out, other applications of this relationship between CTX and large language models, because AI is going to come for every space. Every vertical is going to be impacted by AI. But anything to do with news and current events, our position is it'll need to be paired with a partner technology that does kind of what CTX does if you really want to scale it. So that's Break the Web. I hope this hasn't been too long and nobody's fallen asleep. But yeah, thanks for your time. And now I'm for the part I'm most excited about, which is the Q&A.
Jake, thank you so much for this.
Yeah.
This is really fun. I just got my bottom line notification at 9 p.m. Eastern, so thank you. Yeah, I've been using the app for a couple of weeks now, and it's wonderful. The user interface is great. The experience is fantastic. And you answered my question, how are you going to monetize this? And it's a subscription, and I love the, this small payments for, an article. I think that's got a lot of potential. So if anybody has any questions, please raise your hands and we'll call on you. Victor, you're up first.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, Jake, what you've done is incredible. I love the way you sort of stripped what exists and what's coming next into an abstract and then reconstructed it for your own purpose. That is just astonishing. So good for you and for your team. I do have a question, if you could shed some light, because I have no knowledge of this. How do credit card companies feel about microtransactions? In other words, as a vendor, they get a cut of the transaction, but when the transaction is 25 cents and their cut is pennies, how does that work?
Yeah, so that's a big part of the equation. And I know that there are some people who say that's the reason why micropayments won't work. And you know, our perspective is there are likely some ways to work around that. Like that implies that the micropayment is going through on the spot, for example, in a 25-cent fee, but like there's no reason, at least theoretically, that you couldn't create a relationship where you only submit a transfer to a publisher at $50 threshold or whatever the case may be. So my personal take, and I'm firmly a believer in the limits of certainly my own knowledge and general human knowledge, but I think if micro subscriptions is possible, I don't think that the logistics of transfer payments are going to be the thing to stop it, I would say.
And if I could take that to just one other perspective, do you see it possibly working like EasyPass, where your user is not necessarily a subscriber, but they have a refreshment threshold of money that gets pulled occasionally whenever they reach their threshold of micropayments?
Definitely. Like when I say micropayments, like I just mean the genre of that concept. Like we're not tied necessarily to a specific way of doing it. I think there's any number of ways that it could work. So I absolutely, we're certainly open to that. And I think that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, and I'm fascinated how that can apply elsewhere as well. Thanks so much, Jake.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Victor. Simon, and then we'll go to Gian.
Hi, Jake. Congratulations. Dean literally took all my questions. My questions were around your team and, you know, the skill set, which you answered. The other one was around your fundraise strategy. And I guess I'll just reiterate, with the current situation of individuals just getting so much information overload, not just the news, but with everything else, are you actively looking at areas that you can use as use cases for this foundational tech that you've created? Or is that more kind of like your strategy moving forward? And love to see the examples if you want to share.
Yeah, I think this group would get a kick out of it. So let's not leave before I do that. Look, we built Break the Web because we believe in the vision of Break the Web. That is first and foremost why we did this and what we did, and we still believe in that vision, and we think we've built a great product that's heading in that direction. At the same time, I would say we just so happen to have built, like, we're not the wave, AI is the wave, but we just so happen to have built a surfboard that is perfectly capable of riding that wave in a very specific, interesting way. And so I just don't think we know enough to say like, oh, we're definitely shutting those doors now, right? Like this space is evolving so fast. Even when I talked to Kelly a few weeks ago, he just on the spot made up a use case that sounds like that I had never thought about. That's incredibly compelling, right? Like until a month ago, we didn't even know about our second use case here that we're really excited about. And so I think it's more like we're open-minded, like we don't know. We know what we've built, we know we have something, but I think the key is to expose it to a wider audience and find out whether what makes sense for the business is to be more vision focused or to be more tech focused. And we can only do that if we just grow and scale and get out there to more people.
Thanks, Simon. Actually, I know, Susan, you were having some technical difficulties raising your hand, so I'm going to call on you, and then we'll go to Gian.
Okay, great. This is just so incredible, Jake. It's lovely and wonderful, and so many applications. So here's my question to you. One, and then I'll let others ask more, which is defensibility, right? So you guys have spent 2 years building this really, really, really cool technology. And I can imagine that there are big companies out there that are busy working on it or trying to figure out what you've done. So how are you defending your intellectual property?
Well, we have a patent pending on the core technology, and I say that because it's important to have, but I don't say that to suggest that it answers every question about,
Yeah.
defensibility. So we've done what we can on that front. The technology is pretty non-trivial to develop in the first place. It's not just because somebody sees it and it's like, oh, that looks cool, let me build it. It's not the way that it works. It's incredibly complex to build. And so there is just a difficulty moat as well. And then, we have a 2-year head start. So I think the key is really just to grow as fast as possible, like, especially given some of the early indications from the market, like who gets 20 cents a download. So I just think we need to grow as fast as we can and increase our lead, and see where that takes us. I mean, those are hard questions, right, around defensibility. And like at the highest possible level, those are just really hard questions. But I've never believed that anyone should not do anything because maybe Google wants to turn that Mordor eye to it,
Yep. Totally agree. Yeah.
Thanks, Susan. Gian, and then we'll go to Kelly.
Oh, thank you. Oh, very nice, Jay. Congratulations that you found your serve riding the wave of ChatGPT or maybe AI. Which one that you really give yourself a definition on that? I mean, okay, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
2 questions from me. One is about your startup timeframe. The other one maybe is more about your future vision. So the time frame is, I like to know if you could tell how long took you from very start to now that you have 1,000 user, and from your vision, how soon you would put on yourself on the market or have some kind of stock bond or whatever. and so if you could give a little bit of concept to give us. And the second, you want to go the first one first, or you want me to give all the questions?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I'll answer the first one and then the second one in order. So
Oh,
yeah.
okay. All right. Second question is, I realize that you are create your serve that you says is a topic specific, right? Almost. Okay. My question for you is, have you thought about to search has a service package to compare company's service, give it evaluation? Can you do that?
I'll answer your first question and then I'm gonna ask you a question to your question, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
The first question is, so we've been in market since July 1st. Over the course of July 1st, we acquired, call it 350 users, but for the sake of market signal, I wouldn't read too much into that. That's like beta users, friends, family, investors, people who like just got it one way or another through direct connection. We started marketing August 1st, 9 days ago, and we've since acquired 700 users in 9 days on a total marketing spend of $130. So that's, we're in market, to answer part of your question, and it's pretty early, but like, I mean, we're putting numbers on the board, if you will, in this early state that we're pretty happy with. Your second question, what do you think we should do about that? I think would be my question to you.
I think from your structure, what was that? CTW? CT what? Your CTX. Yeah, CTX. Okay. Your CTX is writing with the ChatGPT, right?
We don't write content, but we feed content to ChatGPT.
Right. So you actually shared part of element with the service of ChatGPT. Is that right?
We use ChatGPT as a client. So like a lot of startups, we have an API connection with ChatGPT.
Right.
And there's any number of ways to integrate with ChatGPT, but we're just we're a vendor for ChatGPT. We have no formal relationship with them. We just use them for our purposes via the API.
Okay, well, I don't know if this question is associated with, so if you do the comparison, for example, if you compare the subject, then you go to sub-subject. In that route, maybe you can do some kind of a service package, but not all of them, right?
So in the slices, like we're definitely going to subtopics. So an example would be like, say we're in the TV and film slice. You might have Oppenheimer as a topic. You might have what happened to Tom Cruise, Robert De Niro, and it's all just subtopics. So it all just shrinks down. But from a technical perspective, that's really from a user perspective that you're thinking about it as subtopics. From a technical perspective, it's really just we take a data set and we just find the trends in that data set, whatever that data set happens to be. So it's just about shrinking the size of the inputs rather than like nesting topics within topics from like a technical perspective.
Okay, can you do the broadcasting or no, do the forecasting of a movie comparison? Can you do that? Category.
Forecasting like expectations around what it should, like how it should perform based
But
on.
those are easy, isn't it? Those are easy because those are you give the definition, not the program itself. I'm talking about if you do different, like for example, if a company give a service, company has their own definition. How are you do the comparison between company and company's different services with your define of regulation? More practicing like a government regulation.
The difference between companies. I'm sorry, maybe you could say that once again.
For example, let's just use a movie as story.
Jan, I want to move on. I'm so sorry for interrupting, but like let's pull that one to overtime.
Okay.
All right, because we're getting into the weeds and some technical stuff.
Well, I think the first question you did not answer the second part.
Well, so since I just used my first breakout room in the Zoom, even though I've been.
I'm sorry. I did give you a hard time. Let's take you,
Maybe
Todd, and sorry about that.
We could do a breakout room if you want. I kind of like the breakout room concept. So I would be more than happy to answer any of them that I missed for sure. I'm be here.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Jan, thanks. We'll come back to that. Kelly, and then we'll go to Manian.
I'm not sure I have a question other than a couple of observations, and they might be a question actually, Jake. First of all, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. The first observation is I really do appreciate with all the companies we talk to, a lot of the folks we talk to who are all AI companies, when they're not, they're AI enabled companies, and that you define yourself appropriately is a breath of fresh air. Number one. Number two, I see you as a media company. And I'm curious as if you see yourself the same way, but as a media company, then the next place I go to is all the various channels of media, whether it be broadcast, radio, audio podcasts. And we talked about this prior, that all of the AI opportunities allow you to be all of those channels without any actors, without any real overhead, quite frankly. And I'm curious as to where you think this is going to go. What's your North Star? I think is maybe the question that I'm trying to ask here.
Yeah. So and this was kind of the idea that Kelly had floated a while back was, for example, like say a group of podcasters wants to do a completely AI generated podcast. They want to create it without any human intervention. Well, without us, they still need to find all the content that they're going to feed to this bot to create the podcast, right? Whereas what CTX enables in that context is, oh, you just say what you want, what topic you want it to be on, and we'll do the hunting for you. We find all the topic, feed it to the AI.
I got to say, since we spoke last, I've thought about you a lot, and I've thought about, well, not you. I've thought about Break the Web. Maybe I've thought about you a little bit, but the company a lot. And I can't get past the fact that you've done the hard stuff right now. You've created this ability to curate content, to personalize content, using AI. You've got the content, and now the distribution of that content is merely a channel, right? You can choose to distribute this via a text base. You can choose now to do it via voice. You can choose now to do it via video.
That's true.
And this is where I come down to the media company thing, is
Yeah.
that if you tie yourself to only one channel, I think you're limiting yourself, because it's not going to be that difficult for you technologically to bridge that tech from one channel to the next and start delivering in a number of ways. Couple of those ways are so unbelievably unique that you would get a significant amount of attention that you won't get through the text channel. And so so as I said, the more I thought about it after we left our conversation, the more I thought, oh my God, this thing could be, it's not like you're buying news stations, like you're not Murdoch, you're not buying news stations across the land to deliver that channel.
Mm-hmm.
Literally got just a very small arc, a very small leap, technological shift to be able to deliver the content in a myriad of different ways.
You're totally right.
And I get excited about it. So sorry, I'd go on and on about it, but
no, I mean, and it's just, I think, an indication of like, how new this space is, and how, like, every time I talk to people who know a lot, or, have interesting thoughts about these spaces, like, I learn a lot too. And you're totally right. Like, we've been building Break the Web. We think about it because that's where we came from, as thinking about it as this app experience. But the hard part has been done. And there's nothing stopping us from taking that core functionality and saying, oh, this is the voice version of Break the Web. This is the video. And all it takes is another API pairing with some type of tool, right? And so I totally see what you're saying and why in your mind that makes this a media company. And like, I get it. And I think that's a really valid point, and is also something like, hadn't really honestly dawned on us to like say, okay, well, let's just do a voice version of BTW. But like, the hard part, it's just simple. Like, we put our ChatGPT integration together in like 4 days because it didn't require a lot, and our ChatGPT costs, because we pre-organize everything by content and ChatGPT charges by output, they're so cheap. We use like $200 or less per month for ChatGPT for us.
Well, I recommend even manually tying your text into 11 Labs, using even your own voice, and listen to it. You will be inspired to pull that off.
Really? All right. Well, 11 Labs.
All right,
Oh yeah, check out their voice. Their voice the voice generation technology is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Oh,
I'll check
absolutely.
it out.
And I know I'm right on the edge of Todd cutting me off. So I'll let you.
Sorry, Kelly.
Oh, thank you, Kelly. I think you've opened my mind even a little bit in that comment. I appreciate it.
Sorry, Kelly. No, like 11 Labs. Oh my God, it's absolutely fantastic. I've been playing with that. Manian and then Swapnil.
Hi, Jake. Thanks for sharing this cool emerging technology with us. It's amazing how you built the core, and then how your vision is very, very cool. I have like 2-part questions. One is specific to, do you thought about opening this up to an organization, enterprise side of media and content that can be curated and delivered to their employees or users? The other part is on the accessibility side of it. How do you see this work for visually impaired or some other with disability?
Well, let me answer your second question first, since now I can, thanks to Kelly's suggestion, which is, yeah, why the hell not? Accessibly impaired, if you have, for blind people, like for visually impaired people, here's the audio version, right? I don't know how AI's ability is to produce Braille yet, but I think it's maybe somewhere we could get. So I think because of the flexibility of the output, to Kelly's point, like a lot opens up that it certainly hasn't crossed my mind, how to deal with certain like sensual impairments, but now that you're bringing it up, like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I see no reason why we couldn't do that. So the first question, actually, that's an interesting one. It's not the main use case that I was going to show you guys, but it's a different one. And we have one client that actually does make use of our technology in that way. So let me show you. Actually, let me see. So Kelly is at least familiar, but the Unreasonable Group is I never know how to describe them, honestly, a big sort of long-term incubator and investment community for social impact companies. For those that don't, they have about 400 portfolio companies that they try and keep track of every day. And that's a lot. And they're constantly looking for content about those companies and wanting to share it on a newsletter that they send to people. So Dan and I got to talking, and he really likes BTW. And he was like, well, I explained him the tech. He's like, well, why can't we just use that for our own data? And so we decided that actually, yeah, that would be a phenomenal idea. And so we actually are working with them to produce custom newsletters for their own content that matters to them. And the reason I'm kind of half distracted is because I'm looking for the newsletter that we actually create for them. I'll show you a different one, and you'll get the point. So for a company who needs to keep track of a wide variety of topics, we can basically we already crawl the web. We just need to know what topics they're interested in, and we can basically spit back to them completely machine-generated newsletters. So this is an example for Masterclass, who we're in conversation with about a separate use case, but like they need to track all their instructors, right? And so we run the same CTX process, just on a much smaller data set, and we give them, okay, Alicia Keys from your data set trended #1, and then we give like the summary of like what happened that day. Mark Jacobs trended #2, Kris Jenner trended #3, etc. So totally possible, already in existence. And in the case of the Unreasonable Group, we just give them, the top, any press mentions by any of their 400 portfolio companies just automatically go to them each morning. So love the question. And yeah, we've already started heading in that direction. And we think it's pretty interesting because we kind of get it for free in terms of like the tech just does that for a living, basically. And so obviously it's not for free, but we as a technology platform it's a very incremental effort to deliver that sort of customized feed and newsletter.
Yeah, thank you, Jake. I think there is some potential use cases for corporate training and other industry things happening within the organization. They would like to know.
Yeah.
I think we have some kind of use case as well from our organization. I'll share more details. On the other side, we have 1.3 billion people with disabilities. So you have a huge market that's untapped, and there is a talent out there as well. So you can leverage that talent to be inclusive in this platform product. Thank you.
It's what I really love about it. I mean, anytime you can use what you've built to genuinely be of assistance to people, I think it's one of the most rewarding things possible. But I also really like about it that it's a pretty non-gimmicky use of these like new forms of media. Like it's one thing to say like, oh, we're putting an AI podcast together because we can. It's another thing to say like, no, we're actually going to use this to help people who don't have another method of, of consuming this content. And so in terms of center of gravity and like why that you do something, I think it's a wonderful idea. And it's something that now that I've thought about it for all of 5 minutes, I'll definitely look into more and see what we can do.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you. Best wishes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dean.
Yeah, and Jake, you're definitely a media company. There's no question about that on the current model. So get that very clear. I see your architecture of huge value. And yes, this first business model is media, right? It is that. But I'm probably dying to go into more overtime because I've got a few questions. I'm in telematics, I'm in optimization in terms of, trucking. We've got Cisco Foods. We're doing a lot of, helping them with their routes and so on. But I see potentially with your, it's a big database, it's API connections. I can see your architecture how you say it organizes into topics where you could provide incredible insights in a topic type format that's near real live time, that can bring incredible insights to the type of topic that someone would want to subscribe into. Now, they, like I say, in logistics, so I'm in construction where ready mix, they've got 90 minutes before the mix goes hard. So they're under a time strain. So there's things there that I could just see that the way, and I'd love to understand your architecture a bit more, whether you could apply and carve off that IP to be used and licensed in a way that could be used in logistics and other areas. So now it's a value capture in a different license model. It's not media. It's not necessarily going to web. It's going to a data set, going to a lot of data coming in, thousands, and so you get lots of good data. But I can see that the model architecturally, the way, and I could tell it's been bloody well designed and well thought through. You've got a huge opportunity to take this into another area or areas and have that licensed. So I just want you to think about that. It's a great one over a beer or something in overtime.
I think that's the reason we have not yet committed ourselves to calling ourselves a media company, because we know that there are other applications, because when you really strip away all the UI, all the news stuff, it's a technical process to find trends within databases.
Yep.
That's it.
That is, and that's worth liquid gold.
Yeah.
Trust
And
me.
we actually, we hunted for it. For like 3 months, we dropped everything we were doing on Break the Web. So the way that we built BTW with CTX was to work with unstructured data sets.
Yep.
Which is to say bodies of text, which is the harder one, by the way. It's a lot harder to work with unstructured data sets than structured data sets. But one way or another, we got talking with someone who worked in real estate, and we're like, well, what if we can use CTX to find trends in housing market data that show the signs for right before a city is going to explode, for example, like in value. And so we got a pretty far along the road. Like we adapted our tech for use with structured data sets. So it works with structured data sets. It can find trends within structured data sets as well. And I'm not sure whether that's what you meant, but like just to illustrate.
No, it's both. It's both. Like there's absolutely structured and unstructured.
So we can definitely do unstructured. You've seen that. Structured is also a possibility, right? And we kind of got to a point where like we didn't know enough about the market to take it forward. And so I think that's why we haven't, like, I was in a company that decided it was going to go from B2C to B2B, and then it just ended up chasing client after client, and you never know what you're working for, and you don't understand the business enough to really like know if something's going to work. And so we're prepared to do it. We want to be self-protective in the sense of like, I know what it's like to just chase B2B opportunities and like, you don't know enough to do it. And so we just really need to find people or organizations in spaces that are prepared to be the partner to help us guide us through that process. But we know the tech can do it, like that we're sure of.
Yeah, well, that's why to me, I think it's so important that you carve off that IP so that if you have this company, this essentially, Break the Web, a business over here that completely could use it, that's not associated really with web, it's associated with like solving for some transport optimization or whatever. I think it's important to break that out so that you don't sell that piece completely. Now you've sold the farm, you keep that separate, and you can now spin up with the money you've created. That's why you may want to raise another 6 million second, third round, because you're going to have another business, another operation, could be a separate building, but it's very exciting. I'd like to know more about offline, more about that architecture, because I'm in technology myself. So I think you've done an amazing job, mate.
Thank you, Dean. I appreciate that. And happy to continue on.
Please. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Dean. Looking at the times, let's go to Susan and then we'll end it.
Yeah, so this was great, Jake. And I also want to connect up with you. My startup is around teams and combinations of people. So talk about big data sets and their behaviors and their perceptions of each other. So definitely want to connect around that. But thank you so much. And Kelly, thank you for bringing us Jake. And Jake, it's been really fun to have somebody that's both like a startup guy and a tech guy and a data guy all wrapped in one big package. So very much fun to have you here, and would actually love to have you come back, after a bit and tell us how you're doing and where you've gotten to, and talk and let us talk more about different use cases with you. That would be really cool as well.
I'd be happy to. Thank you guys so much for having me. Your questions were incredible and so much fun to answer. Usually I get different questions that are not quite as expansive and allow the conversation to go in so many interesting places. So yeah, thank you guys.
Jake, thank you again. I'm going to end it here. Just a little quick reminder for everyone, please stick around for some overtime. And just another reminder, next week, Young Ino will be joining us for a lovely session on soccer and the FIFA World Cup. Thank you all for coming. We'll see you next week.